So if you guys solve two or more than two, you are definitely going to be get into the round, into the next round, whatever it's going to be, either it's an interview or the coding round. Okay. So can you guys quickly try to answer this question? Okay. So the question is quite straightforward, and if you guys have any doubts in the previous class question, whatever we have discussed so far, you guys can ask, right? Or just post in the chat section. I will try to answer all of those. Okay, this was the question which was being asked in the head within speed before. So we have taken so that you guys will have a better understanding that what was being asked before.
దుకాణం పెద్ద ఎత్తలేడు.
Okay, so if you guys have gone through the question, what the question is, let me explain quickly to you. Okay, so the number is a perfect number if is equals to the sum of its proper divisor. That is the sum of the positive divisor, excluding the number itself. Write a function to check if a given number is the perfect or not. So you need to check whether a given number is a perfect number or not. Right? So we are given an input n, okay, and which is given as a 15. So you need to find that the 15 is a proper divisor or not. Right? So what you're gonna do is you will start from the one, find the each and every divisors of that. So 1, 3, 5, okay, and some of these is 9, which is not equal to the 15. So I can claim it's not a proper divisor. Okay, okay, great. So some of the solutions I have got. Okay, good. But here you need to keep in mind that head within is always all about the time complexity. I know it's an easy question. You can do it. You can do it just in a for loop, right? But you need to optimize your solution. Try to think of an optimized way. How can you do it, right? Okay. So one solution, the solution is good, right? The solution is correct as well. But will it pass all the test cases? Can you optimize your code, right? That is the question. So let me explain you the brute force approach, or which I call it as a non-optimized approach. The very first approach that comes to everyone's mind, right? What you're gonna do is, so if I just open my notepad and show it to you guys as well. So the very first approach that comes to my mind is, okay, what I'm gonna do is I will just run a for loop, or maybe I can just open an online compiler. Okay, we will traverse from 1 to the square root of n. Okay, good. So if you guys see the compiler itself, right? So iterate from 1 to the n minus 1. Correct. You can iterate from 1 to n minus 1, but do you really need to traverse to the 1 to the n minus 1? So what the first solution I can think of is for int I is equals to the, I can start from the 1, I can traverse till the n, that would actually the n minus 1 itself. Okay. And what I can do is, if let's say I have taken a number n, assuming the number has been already taken. If n modulo I is equals to 0, that indicates that number. Okay, here I'm not writing the actual code, right? Here is just a pseudocode. But if you want, we can just do the code, or maybe I can just explain you the pseudocode, because writing a code is not a tricky thing in that, right? If you know the for loop concept, if you know how to take a variable, that's all the writing the logic. Yep, we can start from 2 as well, because the 1 is common for all. But is there a way you can optimize more? Okay, so let me tell you guys, and after that, what we're gonna do is we will just find this, like if there is a number, we will just increment the count. Right, this is just a pseudocode. This is not an actual code that we are going to write. Whatever the language you want, I can just write it off. But here we are not going to discuss the actual code, right? The actual code, if you write it, you need to write a lot on that. Here we are going to more focus on what would be the pseudocode, so that you can at least attempt each and every question, right? If you are good with the logic, you can write just a bit of concept is needed, right? So if you have a look at it over here, for n I is equals to 1, I should be lesser than n, and I plus plus we have. Okay. If n modulo I is equals to 0, I can just increase the count by 1. Right? So each and every time I am going to increase the count. Now what I see over here is you have to choose the pre-increment over the post-increment. Okay, it really doesn't matter whatever you choose, right? So what I am gonna do is, let's go through the first solution, right? For I need to iterate from 1 to the n minus 1 and check its divisor. So what I am gonna do is, I will iterating from 1 to the n minus 1, and if n modulo is equals to 0, it's going to be the same inside this, because I will just initialize my count variable as 0, and after that I will just increment the value by 1 whenever I am getting the divisors. The second solution that, and maintain the sum of the divisors if the sum is equals to n. So if at the end, if I got the sum is equals to n, right? So let's say that there is a variable sum which is basically equals to the n. So I can just print out that whether it's a perfect number or not on the basis of the sum. But this is not an optimized solution. Why it is not an optimized solution? First of all, if we see the for loop, we are going to iterate each and every number, right? Starting from 1 to the n minus 1. Let me tell you what is the drawbacks of this solution, right? If I just list down the drawbacks of this solution is, so what are the drawbacks you guys see over here, right? The very first drawbacks I see is that, like, the time complexity is a big O of n, right? Is there a way we can reduce it? Why it's a big O of n? Because we are iterating a loop which is basically from 1 to the n, and which is inside a for loop. So everything we need to calculate. Okay? Is there a way we can reduce it? The very first thing, right? Is there anything we can optimize in this? Right. So okay, if I explain you with an example, so what do you guys see over here is, right? So 6, let's pick 6. Okay. So if I just pick 6, how will you form the divisors of it, right? You will start from 1, but actually it's 1 into 6. That is the number I'm gonna get. So what if I include 1 as well as 6, right? I don't have to traverse till the n minus 1 number as well. Okay, if I have the second number as 2 into 3, right? If I can take the third number Okay, if I take about the third number, that is 3 into 2. So what I am going to do is I'm just in the very first scenario, what I am doing is I'm just dividing it by 1, then dividing it by 2, then dividing it by 3, and then later on I will try to divide it by 4, whether it's get divided or not. If it's not getting divided, I will not increment my count. Okay. If it's like I will try to divide it by 5, then 6. Right. The 6 I'm not going to try because we need to test it till the n minus 1. So divisors of 15 are 1, 3, and 5. We haven't included the 15 also, right? Because the 15 itself, if we include, it's definitely not going to be a perfect number. So the better approach would be rather than iterating to the big O, rather than iterating for loop from 0 to the n, 0 to the n minus 1 or n, what we can iterate is for, or maybe it's 1, you can call it 2 as well, right? Because since the 1 is always going to be a factor of each and every number, right? So you can start it from the 2 and go till the square root of n. So you can go till the square root of n. Okay, and what you need to include is you need to include the value of n by I as well as the number itself or the I itself. If you write just inside the for loop, if you are writing a for loop like this, for I is varying from, if I is varying from 0 to, 2 to square root of n. So what you can do is you can just say that I'm going to include n by I as well as I. Right? So what it's gonna give me, let's say you start with the 6, okay, so 1 into 6, then 2 into 3. So I'm including 1 as well, 6 as well, but this is not we are going to include. So we'll start from the 2. So it will include 2 and 3 as well. So the divisors of 6 are 1, 2, and 3. Since we are counting the 1 as well, so 1, 2, and 3. So 3 and 3 will give me 6, and it's a perfect number. So this is what the efficient solution is. An efficient solution is to go through the number till the square root of n. And if a number I divides n, then add both I and n by I to the sum. If we, okay, there's a edge case we are missing out. Can anyone tell me? Okay, let me just show it to you. So if we have a look at the structure of the code, so how exactly we're gonna write it? We will first find all the divisors from 2 I into I is lesser than or equals to the n, I plus plus, if n modulo I is equals to 0. Okay. And okay, can anyone tell me why we are using this condition? Great. So we are getting a duplicate number, and when we will get a duplicate number, when the number is a perfect square, let's say if we talk about this case, we have taken it as 100. So 100 will have a duplicate number, and it will give me 10 into 10 at one instance, right? There would be more solutions as well. Like if I start from 1, so that would be 1 into 100. The second solution is going to be the 2 into 50. The third solution is going to be 3 is not divisible, 4 is divisible, so 4 into 25. Right? Then we are having a 5 into 20. Then 6 is not divisible, 7 is again not divisible, 8 is again not divisible, 9, and then we are getting it as a 10. But do we need to count it twice? No, we are not going to count it twice. We are going to count it just for the ones. If we are going to count it for the ones, here the I value will also be 10, and the n by I value will also be 10. So the 10 plus 10, I'm not going to do that, right? So what I'm going to do is, if I into I is not equals to 10, then only I'm going to do this. Else, I will just add it only for once. Right? Okay, there is still a edge case we are missing out. What was the edge case we are missing out? What if the value is exactly equals to the 1? Right? So since we are not counting the number itself, if you guys carefully see over here, we have a number 15, but we are not counting the 15. Right? So 1 is not a perfect number according to the question. And if 1 is not a perfect number, we need to exclude that condition as well. Right? So if the sum is equals to n and the number is not equals to 1, then only we are going to return true, else we are going to return false. So if I just summarize the question, like whatever we have discussed so far, okay, first thing is the time complexity you guys need to take care of. Right? The solution can be done in the big of n as well, but we have optimized it to the square root of n, which is big of square root of n, right? Or root n. The second thing, what we have done is the edge cases, right? This is where the most of the people make mistakes and they are not able to pass a few of the test cases, right? So edge cases you need to take care of. Any notes, guys, in this question? Or any steps you guys didn't get? If all good, maybe we can move on to the next question. Can you guys try to read the question? Kind of a good question, and you need to think of a time complexity as well in this question as well. Okay, so the question here is, please explain how to find the edge cases quickly one. Okay, so for finding the edge cases, there are two rules I see, right? First of all, there will be a constraint given inside the question answer, right? So write a function to check if a given number is perfect or not. This is the question. A perfect is equals to the sum of its proper divisor, that is the sum of the proper divisor excluding the number itself, right? So whenever you see the word excluding the number itself, or in most of the questions, you will be given a range like this. I don't have in this question, but if you see the acceptance criteria of each and every question, they will give you some range as well, like given in this question, right? If you guys see, they have given a range from 1 to the 10 to the power 5. Check whether the number can be 1 or not, right? So always keep in mind you can always iterate for this range. If they haven't included the equality condition over here, you wouldn't have noticed it, right? Or you wouldn't have take care of it. But if they are including, this is a different question altogether. I'm just giving you an example that how to find the edge cases, right? So for finding the edge cases, like finding the let's say the question is all about some finding a square root or something like that. Always think about what can be the possible mistake that we would be doing, right? Let's say if I will explain in this question as well, there is also few edge cases, so you will get a better understanding that how to find that. Okay, so let me tell you the question. What is actually the question is, given an array of an element and a number m, we need to find all the distinct pairs existing in an array whose pair sum is divisible by the number m. Fill the total numbers of such pairs. Distinct numbers means 1, comma 2 and the 2, comma 1 are the same. Ordering of a pair doesn't matter. Right? So what exactly we are going to do is, let's say they have given a number as 10, 9, 5, 4, 5, 7, 2, 8, 20, 21. Okay. And the number we are assuming, the sum we need to create it as 30. Right. So let's assume the sum we need to create it as 30 and the numbers are given as like this. What are the possible pairs you can pick so that the sum is equal to the 30? Okay. Can anyone quickly tell me the brute force approach, how exactly you guys can think for that? Okay. Initialize a set of a given array using two for loops, check whether it's divisible or not. Correct. This is what the first approach you guys should come to your mind. But now the question over here is there a way to optimize it? Right? Guys, heck with NP is all about optimization. If you, I know you can write the two for loops, you will get few of the test cases passed, right? At least the sample one will definitely gonna get passed. But I cannot assure you that all will get passed until unless you won't optimize your solution, right? Because they usually put some of the test case which needs an optimization. They usually put some higher values or some what they do is like they usually try to put some of the test cases which will only pass when your code is optimized completely. Right? So correct, the very first solution, maybe I can just briefly explain it to you. What can be the first solution is using a two for loop. So what you can do is you can just write a for loop, right? Which will basically start from 0. Okay, and I should be lesser than an I plus plus. Then you can proceed further. For in j is equal to the I plus 1, j should be lesser than n plus plus j. Okay, and whenever you find any numbers, right, keep summing that number. Right? So if you sum that number, okay, for each element check whether the m minus current element is present in the set or not. Correct. That is the approach. I do agree with you. But the question here is a bit different, right? Whose pair sum is divisible by the given number m? Right? So let me tell you with an example as well. Let's say the number given is a 15. Okay. So the very first approach, I don't think so anyone will be having a doubt in this. The very first approach is you need to iterate a loop, you need to iterate a second loop. After iterating a second loop, what you need to find is, so let's say the number you got as a 10. So let's say number 1. Okay. So the number 1 would be equal to a of I. Let's say the name of the array is a. Okay. So that is the number 1 you got. And after that, you need to find the number 2. Okay. So for the number 2, you need to hunt in this loop. And after hunting in this loop, if you find the number 2, you can directly include it inside the pairs. But that is not a good way of doing it, right? You will get few of the test cases failed. Okay, is there a way to optimize it? Yes, there is a way to optimize. Okay. So what exactly they are asking is, let's say forget about the 30. Okay, let's say they have asked it for the 15. Okay, if they have asked it for the 15, for the 30, how jn is taken, sir? Okay, it's not j comma n. Like it's just a pseudocode, but it should be j plus n. It's not j comma n. It's j should be lesser than n. The same condition what I have written over here. Clear? So 10, 9, 4, 5, 7, 2, 8, 20, 21. We have 30 over here. Okay. So we need to form 30 anyways. So the 10 Now I will hunt for the 20. For the 9, I will hunt for the 21. For the 4, I need to hunt for the 26, and so on and so forth. But for sorry, but for that I would be needing a 2 loop. Okay. So for that I would be needing 2 loops. The way to optimize is basically what we're gonna do is we will keep a count of these variables. Right? So there can be a number of counts that we need to keep. Is there a way we can optimize our count as well? Right? So what I'm gonna do is, let's say I have 10, 20. Okay. If I have just okay, if here I have 10, 20, what if I have a 10, 50 as well? So I need to store it separately. Okay. So what I need to do is I need to store them separately. So if I tell you in a simple word what exactly the ask here is 10, 9, 5, 4, 7, 10, 9, 5, 4, 7. Okay. After that we have 2, 8, 20, 21. 2, 8, 20, 21. Okay. So this is the question we are given. Right? So 10, 9, 5, 4, 7, 2, 8, 20, 21 we have given. Now, and we need to make it as a 30. What if there was a 50 as well? Right? What if there was a 70 as well? Or maybe you can call it as a 80 as well. So what I'm going to do is, rather than storing these numbers again and again, I will just take the modulo of these numbers. So 10, 9, 5, 4, 7, 2, 8, 20, 21, and this number will again become 20, and this number will again become 20. Right? Now we'll store the count of these multiples. Right? So after these numbers, how many times the 20 will appear? 3 number of. Now we'll create a map. Okay, either map or I will create a dictionary if I talk about in terms of Python. Okay? So either I need to create a map or either I'm going to create a dictionary. So if I create a dictionary over here, how it would going to look like, right? So, okay, let's first think about an edge case, then we will deep dive into the code, what the code we are going to return. But still, it's not a complete solution what I have written over here. Let's say I found 10 is getting repeated one number of times. Okay, 9 is getting repeated one number of times. So if you have a, maybe we have a solution over here. Okay, 10 is getting repeated one number of times, 9 is getting repeated one number of times, 4 is also 1, 5 is also 1. Similarly, we have 7 is also 1, 2 is also 1, 8 is also 1, 20 is also 1, 21 is also 1. Right? If you have a 50, so how I'm gonna check it? First, I will check for the very first number, right? That is equal to the 10. Now, I will check inside the hash. I will check inside the hash. Is there 20% or not? Right? If there is a number which is 20 and it's present, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna multiply the count of this into the count of this, and that would be my actual answer. So if you have a look at this example, right, the kind of a same set we have taken, but we have taken m is equal to 15 over here. The reason behind the m is equal to 15 because it has some special cases over here. What are these special cases? If you see, we have 10, 9, 4, 5, 7 is 1. Right? So far, the 7 is getting repeated one number of times. But so far, it's all 1. Then 2 is also 1. 8 is also 1. Now we got 20. So rather than taking it again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the modulo of this, that will give me 5. And I will just increase the count of this. So that is equal to the 2. So now it will become 2. For the 21, I will just take the modulo of this number and it will become 6. Now I got it as a 1. Now I know the count of these variables 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1. Is it clear till here for everyone? Okay, now I'm going to tell you how exactly we're going to form a pair. So for forming a pair, what I'm going to look for, I will iterate a loop starting from 0 index to the n minus 1 index, and I will start from the 10. So that is 1 into 2 will give me 2. Okay. After that, I have 9. So the 9 into 6 will give me 1. After that, I have 4. So with respect to the 4, I need 11. I don't have 1. Okay. With respect to the 7, I need 8. I have 1. So 1 into 1 will give me 4. The total number of sets I can form over here is 4 itself. Okay. So 1 into 2 will give me 2. 1 into 1 will give me 1. 1 into 1 will give me 1. Okay. Is there any special case we are missing out? And what could be the special case? Right? This is quite a straightforward, but still we're gonna miss out some of the test cases. If the M value is 15, we got the solution. We can only form 4 pairs with that. Since we are not counting A comma B and B comma as a separate one, we got the 4 pairs. But is there a edge case we are missing out? Guys, writing a code is not a okay. Even M. What is M? Okay, even M. So okay, you mean even the value of M. How does it create a difference if we are taking it as a even, right? Since we are just checking it for the modulo, right? So even if we take a modulo, it will always return the. Just think about the more often examples. What comes to your mind when you take a modulo? What would be the possible solutions you can get when you take a modulo, and how will it create a difference to our answer? Okay, let me tell you one example. What if I have a 15 over here? Correct. So the same number in the array we have, we will still be maintaining a count, right? Let's say if the 9 is getting repeated 2 number of times, I will make it 2, right? Okay, so the edge case that we are missing out is basically this. Okay, how is an edge case? So let me tell you something. If I have 10, 9, 4, 5, 7, 12, 8, 20, 21, and 14. What we have included 20 and the 40. Or maybe few other numbers. Let's not talk about that. If you just check the sum of these numbers, right? So the 10 is getting repeated 1, 9, 1, 4, 1, 5, 1, 7, 1, 12, 1, 8, 1. Now I got 0. 0 is 1 times initially. Then I got 21. 1 is getting 1 time. Then I got 40. 0 is 20 times. I hope forming this is not a big deal, right? But how you gonna match up with the 0, right? You cannot again have a 20 with respect to that. Right? Let's say I started iterating from here. Okay, I will iterate inside this only, right? So I will start iterating from here. Will you ever get the 0 with respect to the 20? Because a number cannot have a modulus 20. Are you getting it? So a number, if a number, let me explain it in a bit better way. So what I am trying to say is if the number is 20 and 40, okay, and the 10. Let's talk about the 10 as well. So if I take the modulo of these numbers and the m is equal to, let's say m is equal to 20 we have. So if I have m is equal to 20, how it's gonna be look like? 0, 0. I'm just taking a modulo over here. These are the modulo. Okay, these are the modulo of the numbers. Okay. So how will you find 20 with respect to that? Because you cannot always find 20. So how? But the 0 includes that. So what you're gonna do is whenever you find a 0, okay, whenever you find 0, what you need to do is you need to find the count of zeros. Okay, find the count of zeros. After finding the count of zeros, you need to do an NC2, right? Or in a similar way, I can just tell it it's the n into n minus 1 by 2. Nothing new in that, but what you're gonna do is, let's say for the 0 is repeating 2 number of times. So where this 0 is coming from? From the 20 and 40? Can you make a pair of 20 and 40? Yes, I can make it. How many pairs can you make it? Only one pair you can make it. So that would be 20, 40. Because of 40, 20 is again a repetitive one. So I'm not going to include that. So only one pair I can make of. If I have 3 number of times, how many pairs can I make? Let's say if I have 20, 40 and 60. How many pairs I can make it? Can anyone tell me? And the m value is equal to 20. How many pairs do I correct? So I can make 3 numbers of pairs. How? Basically one, let's say 20, 40, 60. So one will be 20, 40. Other one would be 20, 60, and the other one would be 40, 60. That is 3C2. 3 into 3 minus 1 by 2. That is again a 3. Okay. If I have 10, right? Let's talk about the second scenario. Okay. If I have n by 2 number, which is exactly equal to n by 2. So if I have m by 2 number, so this is also we need to consider inside the same case. Right? Because if I have two n by 2 numbers, right? So it would gonna sum up. Let's say I have given 10, 10, 10. Okay, and the m is equal to the 20. Right? So according to you guys, it will be the 10, 3. But you won't be having a respective number with respect to this, right? So what you need to do is like see for this for any of the numbers, you can find the respective number with respect to the 9. What you're gonna hunt for? With respect to the 9, you're gonna hunt for the number 15 minus 6. So you're gonna hunt for 6. Whether you will find that a 6 is present or not. For the number 4, you're gonna hunt for 11 if I talk with respect to the 50. For the 5, you're gonna hunt for 10. But for the 10, you need to hunt for the 10 itself, which is the number itself. So whenever you find a number itself, what you need to do is you again need to perform an NC2 operation. So if I have 10 is getting repeated 3 number of times, how many times I can take it? 3 into 3 minus 1 by 2, which is basically again a 3. Okay, if it's getting repeated 2 number of times, which is basically 2 into 1, 2 into 2 minus 1 by 2, which is basically 1 divided by 2, that is equals to the 1. Right? So two edge cases you need to think of. The very first edge case is basically when the number is exactly divisible by that, right? And you are getting a modular 0. So the modular is 0 and the modular as n by 2, right? It's the same case. You can always consider NC2 for that. So is the solution clear, guys? Before we move on to the code, maybe if you guys have any doubts, maybe I can clarify, else we'll go forward. And this was actually being asked in the Hack Within C in the previous years. So I know it's a kind of a bit on the tougher side, but yeah, you guys need to prepare on this level. Okay. So I hope no doubts. I will go through the code once as well. Okay. So create a dictionary for the frequencies of remainders. So what I'm gonna do is here would be having a so what I am gonna do is I will create a dictionary. For those who are doing in Java, they can make use of HashMap. It works same exactly as dictionary. There is no difference in that, right? Whenever you want to use HashMap in the Java, at the same time you can use a dictionary in the Python. Here I'm using it a Python. I'm doing it in a Python since most of you guys have opted for that. So this is the code. Reminder is equals to the initially I have taken it as an empty one. For num in array, that means for every number you need to iterate, current current reminder is equals to the num modulo m. How is return to take place? I didn't get your question. Okay, I'm still explaining the code. Maybe after once I explain, if you guys have any doubts, maybe you guys can again ask. Okay, so basically what we are doing is the very first we will create a dictionary for the frequencies of the remainders. Right? So I will first calculate the remainders of each and every number. How exactly we are going to calculate the remainders? First I will num modulo m. I will take the modulo of each and every number. Right? This is what we have done so far. I'm just taking a modulo of each and every number. So we'll just take the modulo. If the current remainder in reminders, what is the remainder? Reminders is basically a dictionary that we have created. Initially it was an empty one. Okay. Current reminders plus is equals to the one. If the number is not, if the number is present, I will just add to one to that. Okay. If the number is not present, I will just mark it as a one because I have very first time I have encountered the number. So how it's gonna create is, let's say if I just create a dictionary for this or the hash map for this, right? You can call it as a hash map or dictionary. The same way you can create a hash map as well. So if I just write the logic for this, so the 10 is getting repeated one number of times because we never encountered it. So it will go inside the loop and it will check for that. 9 is again getting repeated one number of times. 5 is again getting repeated one number of times. Okay. Then 4 is again getting repeated one number of times. We are putting the modulo things over here. So the 7 is again 1. Okay. 2 is again 1. 8 is again 1. Then we have 20. Okay. So the 20 is again 1. Okay. Okay. Then we have 21. 21 is again 1. Now I again encountered 20. Right? So what exactly gonna happen when the current remainder is remainder? That is basically the number is itself present inside the dictionary or the hash map. What I'm gonna do is I will go to that index and increase by one. So I will go to this index and increase it by one. Right? So I will satisfy this condition. Now I filled this 20, I filled this 20. Now one more 20. So I will again go to that condition and I will just increase it by one. Now I got the complete hash map for this. Right? So I got the 10, 9 and I got the dictionary or the hash map. Once I got the dictionary or the hash map, what I need to take care of? The second thing. Okay? The second thing is basically creating, the first thing is creating a dictionary. The second thing is iterating over each and every number. So for REM and remainder, in which we are going to iterate inside the hash one or inside the dictionary. Once we are going to iterate inside the dictionary, complement is equals to the m minus remainder. Okay, what is an m over here? The m is basically the number we have taken. So whatever the number is given, the remainder we are going to subtract from that number. If okay, now what I'm gonna check is, we need to take care of a two conditions, and if those two conditions doesn't match, then we only go to the else if part. What were the two conditions? So let's say if the m value is 30, okay, and the remainder value was 0, right? So what is the remainder? If you guys see, the remainder is basically what is REM in the remainder. Okay, REM is basically the keys that we are going to iterate for each and every number. Okay? If I just tell you briefly what are the REM, REM is basically 10, 9, 4, 5, 7, 12, 8, 0, 1. These are the numbers we are going to iterate one by one. Is that clear? So if I have m that is 30 and the REM is basically 0. So basically REM is basically the keys that you're gonna put for those. It's not the values at all. Okay? So if you see the complement that we have returned, so the complement is equals to the m minus REM. Okay. If we have m minus REM, so what is the value of m we got so far? So the m value was, let's say it was 30. So REM, let's say the initial REM was 10, the remainder was 10. Okay. So my complement will become 20. Right? In this case, my complement will become 20. Okay, if I have REM as 0, that would only be possible if a number is like the perfect divisible of. If a number is a perfect divisible of 30, I will be getting REM as a 0. That means the number is going to be the itself. The number is going to be the itself. Right? This is the second case. Okay, if I have REM as a 15, right, exactly 15. That means the number is itself of 15, so I will get 15. Okay. If I have REM as, let's say, 5, okay, so I will just make it 24. Now, can you guys tell me, will it go to the if part or will it go to the else if part? If or else if. Can you guys tell me for the first one? Which will it go to the if or will it go to the else if? If you guys can see, we have a if loop, we have the if condition, we have a else if condition as well. Where it should gonna go? Okay, else if is it correct? So it's gonna be like this. It will go to the else if part, it will go to the if part, it will go to the if part, and it will again go to the else if part. Why I'm saying is because we need to first check for the two conditions whether the number is the complement that we got is exactly divisible by is exactly the twice of that complement is equal to m. Right? And the second thing we need to check is if the complement is equal to m. That is basically for the remainder 0. That is basically for the exactly the half of the number. If I have these numbers of pairs, what I'm gonna do is pairs is equal to the remainders of rem into remainders rem minus 1 divided by 2. What exactly it's going to do is it's basically NC2 that we have here. So how many numbers we're gonna get is we will take care of an NC. Okay, if we go to the LCF part, the complement in the remainders is equal to the pairs is equal to the remainder pairs into remainders of complement. What exactly I'm going to do over here is I will check what is the remainder, what is the complement. Okay, complement is basically m minus remainder. Right, so if a number is a 10, okay, if m is equal to 30 and the number is equal to 10, I need to hunt for 20. So this is what it will hunt for the 20, this is what it will hunt for the 10. And the 10, the values of a 10 into 20 will give me the final outcome. Okay, why I'm doing this is equals to 0. The reason why I'm doing this is equals to 0, to not to double count the numbers, because what's gonna happen is, let's say I created somewhere I created a resistance. Okay, let's say I started from this. So what I'm gonna do is I will make it 10 into 20 will 10 plus 20 will give me 20. Correct, to exclude the repetition part. 1 into 3 will give me 3. Now if I come to the 20, I'm again gonna check for the 10. But whenever I just take this value, I will make it 0. So when I will come to the 20, I will multiply these numbers, but still it's going to be 0 and it's not going to affect my answer. So to be specific, to avoid the repeated values, we are just making the remainders is equals to 0. Now num pairs is equals to the pairs plus num pairs. The pairs is basically which you are getting from the complement is equals to 0, or the 2 into complement is equals to that. The num pairs is equals to the pairs plus num pairs we have. Okay, make sure you initialize the pairs inside the loop. So basically pairs you need to initialize over here with the value equals to 0, because they are going to change each and every time. And you need to keep adding it to the pairs plus num pairs. Any doubts, guys? Any step you want me to repeat? Okay, sorry. So basically the question is, if we keep print the total number of such pairs, right? We are not printing the pairs. What they want us to print is, what exactly they want to conclude from this is, distinct pairs means 1 comma 2 and the 2 comma 1 are the same. The ordering of a pair doesn't matter. It's not a big deal to print the numbers as well, right? If you got the solution, you need to just print the complement and the m minus remainder, right? So if you print those numbers over here, you're gonna get all the possible pairs that you have created. But what actually the question asks is, right? Print the total number of such pairs. So for printing the pairs, what you're gonna do is you will just write a print statement over here, right? And what you're gonna include in that print statement, whenever this if condition succeeds, you will write a print statement over here is basically it will take complement comma m minus remainders of form m minus remainder. So you need to print both these things, right? Or you can directly print remainder comma complement. So this is what you're going to print it. Remainder comma complement will be the pairs, because if I have a remainder as a 10, the complement will go to be the 20, and that is the actual pair that we are going to creating. So whenever this if or the else if condition gets succeed, you just print that out. Correct. It will give you the modular value. That's correct. You will not get the actual number. For the actual number, you need to iterate back again. Because it will give the modular value. For printing, we should use the 2 for loops. I don't think so. You even need a for loop for that, right? You can just print out the numbers, but that won't be the actual number staying back, right? For printing the actual numbers, you need to again iterate back to the original solution. What you have over here is, okay, if I talk about this one, okay, you need to go back to this and you need to again backtrack to that, right? So they usually don't ask like such kind of a lengthy thing, right? But if you want to go back, you can just go back to this solution and you can check whatever the numbers you got. Let's say you got several numbers, right? So assuming that you got the 10 comma 20 and the some numbers as well. So the 10 comma 20, what you're going to do is you will check again for the modular that which has the modular as a 10, and you will need to print out those numbers. So you just need a for loop which gonna end over here, right? You can store these values in a sum array, and after that go back to that and just find out whichever the modulo is satisfying that condition. So one loop for iterating inside this, and one loop for iterating inside this, right? But the printing might take big of x square, correct? Any other doubts, guys? Okay, if not, maybe we can start the just a brief of a linked list we will be covering today, and tomorrow we'll be starting with the question. Okay, we have one more remaining question to discuss. So what I have discussed is as of now is I will call it as an easy question. That was the second one. That was the first one we have discussed. Right? There's still a question left for me to discuss on this PDF, which is basically I would call it as a on the higher side, like the toughest one from all of these. So maybe we can discuss it in the tomorrow's class, right? Because it's gonna take more time. Right? But out of these three, that was the toughest one. Like I would call it as the not on the code basis side, but yeah, there is a lot hidden logic. Like we need to think more of edge cases and all those stuff. So maybe we'll discuss in the next class that question itself. Any doubts, guys? If not, we can start with the linked list. Okay, so let's get started with the linked list. So basically, I will just give you a quick intro and we'll move on to the question quickly. So like the arrays, the linked list is a linear data structure, and like the arrays, the linked list elements are not stored at the contiguous location. Elements are linked using a pointer. And what is basically the pointer is? So if you have a look at the linked list, right? This is how the linked list will look like. This is basically contains the data. This is basically contains the pointer to the next node. Right? So we have two, we have three, we have four. This is the data, and this is the last node will always be pointing to the left. We have a head over here. We call it as a single thing is called as a node. Okay. So the size of a, okay, what are the what how is it useful over the array? We can use an array as well, but how is it useful? The size of an array is fixed with the very first. So you must know the upper limit of the elements in advance. Also, generally, the allocated memory is equal to the upper limit of the respective of a user. What exactly they want to see is, like, let's say you want to store the 100. Let's say you want to store some variable, right? But you are not sure whether how many variables can be. So you will give a length as 1,000, right? So you allocated. Yep. In the Java is also the same concept. Data structure is same everywhere. It's in Python, it's in Java, it's the same concept. And you mean for the okay? So correct. In the list, you won't give, right? In the Java also, we do have an array list, which doesn't require that. But if we talk about an array, right? In the Python, we do have a list and we start using list as well. But in the Java, we also have an array list, right? So which doesn't require a length. But internally, if we see at the array list, right, it requires a length. So how does it work is if you see the internal implementation of an array list or a list, it basically allocates up some memory to the system. And after that, once you increase the size of that, it basically doubles that size. So let's say I'm not sure how much the allocated memory is. So what exactly they do is, if we have a look at the internal implementation, so let's say they defined it as an X, right? So the array list is basically always get initialized with the value X, or a list in a Python will always get initialized with the value X. If if the length exceeds X, it just doubles the X, right? So it basically includes it to the 2X, right? And whenever it becomes 2X, it will again append it twice, right? So it will become 4X. And in the similar fashion, it gets keep on increasing, right? So this is how the internal implementation of a list works. But the linked list doesn't allocate a memory at the first place. Is that clear? So it's the same case in the Java, Python, whatever the language you want to prefer. But yeah, they allocate a memory. Only the thing is that you don't need to define it at specific position in your code, but they still allocate the memory internally. So basically the size of an array is fixed. We must know the upper limit on the number of elements in advance. Also the generally allocated memory is equal to the upper limit irrespective of a user. Okay. Inserting a new element in an array is also an expensive operation because the room has to be created for the new elements to be inserted, and creating the room existing has to be shifted. Is Python list a linked list or array? Depends how you define it, right? But usually it's type of an array. Right? Because the linked list has its own drawbacks as well. We'll discuss the drawbacks as well. If you want to insert a number 1005, so we need to, and we want to maintain a sorted order. So what exactly it's gonna do is we have to move all the numbers to the 1000. Excluding the 1000 deletion is also expensive with the array. Yes, we can explain it, no worries. We are going to explain it anyways in the next class. Okay, so deletion is also expensive with the arrays until and unless some special techniques are used. For example, to delete the 1010 in the ID. So if I want to delete that particular number from here, every number has to be moved one place ahead of this. Right? Every number has to be moved just one place on the left side, right? If I just want to delete that number, right? Or there would be an empty space will be created. So the deletion and the insertion is always an expensive process. If we talk about an array, if you want to maintain some kind of a sorted order, right? But if the linked list is not that expensive, you just need to, okay. Why I'm saying that it has a drawback? Yep, the linked list has a drawback as well, right? So if I look at the advantage, right, it's a dynamic size, insertion of a deletion is easier. But if we have a look at the drawback side, right, what exactly we are doing, the random access is not allowed, right? If I want to access an element, right, in the list or in the array, what I will do is I will just go to, I can define it using an index file, right? I can say the list of food, right? So it will basically pick the fifth element from the list. But in the linked list, you cannot directly pick the fifth element, right? You need to start from the zeroth element and you need to reach till the fourth element, because the pointers are connected in that way. You cannot directly, you don't have an indexing over there, right? So we have to access the element sequentially starting from the first one. So we cannot do the binary search with the linked list efficient with its default implementation. Of course, we can do the binary search if the linked lists are in sorted order. If not, we need to make it in the sorted order, and then only we will be able to use the binary search. I'm not saying we cannot do it, but we cannot do it with the default implementation. The second drawback I see for the linked list is an extra memory space for a pointer is required with each element of a list. Right? So what is an extra memory space? Basically to allocate a pointer. If you have a look at it over here, in the array we only need the data. So I will just keep 1, 2, 3. But in the linked list, I need to keep the pointer as well. And the pointer is basically taking an extra space. Right? So the pointer is going to be an integer value or whatever the value it is. It's going to take an extra space just to point to the second one. So it has its own drawbacks. It has its own advantages as well. But first of all, the drawback is random access. The second drawback is an extra application. Maybe you guys can go through that. So implementation of stacks, include graph, dynamic memory allocation, maintaining the directory of a name. You can use the trees for that as well. You can use the graph as well. Performing arithmetic operations on a longer integer, manipulation of a polynomial by storing the constant in the node of a list. If you have a look at the application in the real world, right? So basically in image viewer we basically use if you have ever do a image analysis, right? So they also use a kind of a linked list structure, right? Previous and the next page in the web browser. You can do it with the stack as well. But if you see the next and the previous, right? So you can do very well with the two stacks, or you can use the linked list as well at the same time. Music players. So link to the previous and the next one, right? You can go in the iterative fashion, like you want to go for the second song, right? So you can use the linked list over there, and you can implement all the songs directly with the linked list. And because we do have a concept of a doubly linked list, which has basically linked on the previous as well as on next. Right? If you have a look at this implementation, it's basically this is how a single linked list looks like. A linked list is represented by a pointer to the first node of the linked list. The first node is called as a head. If the head is if the linked list is an empty, then the value of the head is going to be the level. Each data in the linked list consists of two parts. The data we have, the pointer we have. Right? So this is how we can represent a node. Okay, some operations which can be performed using a linked list. So basically insertion at the beginning, insertion at the end. Insertion at particular position, you will need a position as well as the data for that. Deletion by the values, you will need only the data. You don't need the position for that. If you want to delete by index, you need to go to that particular index. Okay? So how the indexing works is you always have to iterate starting from the 0th one to the particular position, and then you will be able to use the data. So is a method which will basically print the whole data of a linked list. Is that clear, guys? Any doubts so far? Correct. The same methods can be used in the Python. These are not the predefined methods what I'm using, right? You can create your own method, whatever the name you want to give, you can give your own name as well. Is that clear? Okay. This is just a concept that we are going to look upon here. Okay, if you have a look at the these are not the predefined methods, right? If you want to have a look at the predefined method, you can directly use the collection in the Java if I talk about, and you can use the similar thing in the Python as well. So it has some predefined methods, You can make use of those methods, but if you really want to learn the linked list from the basics, these predefined methods, I would never recommend you to go for those, right? Just for learning a linked list, because whenever the linked list question came, the predefined method might not help you, but if you know the concept that how exactly the predefined method works, right? How exactly I need to create a method, you can always write the logic within a few minutes and get the solution. So create a node insertion at the beginning, right? So whenever I see the insertion at the beginning, what should be the first step I should do, right? Create a node. So in whatever the language you want to create, you can create a node using in the Java you can create Python you can create. It's more or less the same logic. You need to allocate a memory. Okay, it should have two parts. One is the data part, the other one is the pointer part. Set the data to the newly created node. Now I will put the data to that. So let's say I have put E over here. Set next to the newly created node to the head of the existing node. Okay, so I will point it to the head of the existing node. Now set the data of a newly created node. Set head, and I will call this new node as the head. For operation insertion at the beginning. Right? The very first operation is creating a new node. The second operation is set the data. Once you have set the data, there is no tracking for that, right? After that, I will just point it to the next. Once I have pointed to the next, I will make it as a head because this is now going to be the first. Whatever the language you're gonna write, the concept is going to be the same. Now, whatever the language you prefer, you need to go. Okay, you need to see that how exactly your nodes are being created, right? Because there are a number of languages that we can prefer, but the logic would be the same across all the languages. Okay? If you have a look at the insertion at the end, it's basically creating a new node. Okay? So once I create a new node, set the data to the newly created node. Okay. Now this node should point to the null. Okay. So if the list is empty, and this is a special case, if the list is empty, set head to the newly created node. If it's not an empty, I need to traverse because I don't have an indexing. There is no way I can reach to the end. So I need to start traversing from here. I will go here, 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 and then I will reach at this point, and I will call it as the that traverse to the end of the list. Set the last of the list to the newly created node. So the last is there, and there will be a point. Okay, and whenever I don't define anything, it's always by default pointing to the null. Right? There is no need to define the null explicitly. If I don't write anything, it's automatically taken as a null. So 4 steps for this as well: creating a new node, setting the data, checking for the condition, is it empty or not. If it's an empty one, you can call it directly a head. If it's not an empty one, traverse till the end and make the last of the node as pointing to this, which is basically this. If I talk the implementation, right? Similar way, you can insert at a given position, right? The deletion by value also works in the same manner. Maybe I can just explain any one of those. So, you guys can go through the because we need to discuss the questions as well. So, if the index is 0, which is the head of a linked list, right? So, deletion by index we are going to discuss. Right? So, let's say I have given an index. That means I have given a node that I'm going to delete, but they have just told me that you need to delete the second number or you need to delete me the third number from the start. So if the index is 0, the head is the existing list, set head to its next. Else, create the two nodes. Right? We will have a current, we will have a previous. These are the pointers that I am going to create. The current will point to the current node of the list. The previous will point to the previous node of the list just before the current. Traverse through the list until you find the given index. Let's say I found the given index over here. And this is the index I'm going to delete. Now, if the index is found, set next of the previous one to the next of the current one. So I'm just going to break this loop. Okay, so if I found that this is the node that I'm going to delete, I will traverse till here. I will just make this pointer pointing to this. So if I just remove this pointer, that will automatically gonna remove. And I don't have to shift all these numbers, right? Because that's the case only with the array. But with the linked list, I don't have to shift the numbers. That's gonna take care of a linked list by automatic. But there is a one more thing we need to take care of. If we are writing in the C, right? We need to disallocate the memory of this as well. If we are writing in the C or the C++, we need to disallocate the memory because once we create a node, we allocated some memory to that. If we don't disallocate the memory, it would be what we call that unnecessary. It's called as a garbage collection, right? So C and the C++ doesn't have auto garbage collection. But if you just remove inside this node in the Java or maybe in the Python, they have an automatic garbage collection. So they will take care of, you don't have to disallocate the memory inside this. Just displaying the values, you need to iterate the complete loop, starting from 0 to the end. So create a node to the head of the linked list. If the head is null, then list is empty. Otherwise, keep iterating the loop until you don't get an empty one. At the end, you got the last one, and you will print out the data. So maybe from the efficiency one, we can start in the next class. Okay. I will make sure the PDF will be shared with you by tomorrow morning. If this, I'm gonna share it by tomorrow. That won't be included in the tomorrow's PDF. The reason behind that is there is still a one question left. Right. So we'll discuss this question as well in the tomorrow's class, and I will share this PDF as well. Guys, make sure this PDF is quite important because it has the previous year questions as well as on a high level side. Most of the questions are on the higher level side. Right? So, and this will actually give you that how exactly the question will look like and how you need to keep thinking of the question that what is the test case is it falling. Yep, they will share you on the WhatsApp. How they used to share with you guys? Previously also they have shared some of the talks. So how they used to share with you guys, how they used to communicate. Okay. 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 I will tell them to send you all in the WhatsApp group, and I will make sure that no one is missing out, so that everyone can get the benefit for this. Right? Okay, guys. Thank you then. Any doubts in the next class? Maybe you guys can ask me or related to the question. Okay, guys. Thank you. Uh, Maybe you can contact to the Suntech team, whatever the doubts you have, and they will carry forward. Or maybe just get your doubts inside the class. I can clarify right away.